Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
What's up, y'all? You're listening to the latest episode of the Tigers Podcast. I'm Frank Bonner, joined by co-host Steven Johnson as always. And today is a pretty good day to be a Memphis basketball fan, as this winning streak has got the Tigers' projections back inside of the NCAA Tournament field, and their stock continues to rise, especially in the eyes of bracketologist Joe Lunardi, who had some really good things to say about the Tigers on the radio today. And then on the football side of things, the 2022 schedule has been released, so we'll dive in to see how the Tigers stack up against some of the opponents on their schedules. But before we jump off, I got to make sure y'all check out some of our other podcasts, starting with Jennifer Biggs, who hosts Sound Bites. Eric Barnes hosts The Sidebar, and you already know our guys Chris Harrington and Drew Hill have got you covered with the Grizzlies podcast every week. You can find all of these anywhere you get your podcasts, from dailymemphian.com to Spotify and Apple Music. So, Steven, let's go ahead and just jump on in it. What has been the biggest factor in this turnaround for the Tigers basketball?
Well, I think the biggest thing has honestly been health. For the most part, this is the healthiest the Tigers have been since they went to the NIT season tip-off in Brooklyn, where they had the full roster, then Chandler Lawson got hurt. So for the most part, they've been having 12, 13 guys available. Imani Bates has been the guy that's really been the only one out. And now that they're back together as one for the most part, I think all the adversity they went through has really just helped them grow. Honestly, they're playing it together as a unit. I think one of the subtle things, the addition or the return of Jermaine Johnson to the coaching staff in kind of like a player development / coaching role has also been big, because it's helped their defense out. I did a story on him and how he's improved kind of like the full court press and things of that nature. So I think everything is just coming together at the right time. We knew this team had the most talent in the conference, and they're finally starting to play like it. So I think they're healthy, and they're starting to figure things out defensively. Offensively, I think they understand that every game they have to go through Jalen Duren. Like Jalen Duren or DeAndre Williams, really honestly, because those two are kind of like, I think the priority, they're option one and option two for the offense, because they do so much. And when defense is starting to collapse down on them, you're seeing Landers and Lester Quinones and Tyler Harris shoot off. So everything's coming together at the right time. And as you kind of alluded to, they're starting to move up in these latest NCAA tournament projections.
Yeah, and I know when they were going through their rough patch, one of the things you mentioned was that, Penny Hardaway teams, their marquee stamp is defense, and defensively they weren't looking like themselves. And so now that they are looking like themselves, I know in your story you talked about how the full court press doesn't look like your traditional 2-2-1 full court press that you would see. Just how difficult has it been for teams to game plan against this full court press now that that they've got it rolling again?
Well, I think the two last games, Cincinnati and Houston, you could see the discomfort, especially with Cincinnati and even Houston. Houston, both of those teams are some of the best in the country at not turning the ball over. Cincinnati almost had its season average in the first half. Houston tied a season high with 19 turnovers against Memphis. And it's kind of like a disguised 2-2-1 press. So it kind of gives you the image that this is the defense you can expect, but it's more the disguise. So maybe they'll send a guy in to come trap where an opponent is not expecting them to. And it's really kind of flustered the last two opponents. And obviously when you have defenders like Alo, Lester, and then you have like the length and size of like a Josh Minor and DeAndre Williams, all of it is perfect, and all of it is like Memphis is like the ideal pressing team because of their personnel. So teams that have difficulty kind of beating it, whereas earlier in the season that teams were exploiting it, I think. But they're all on one page, and they're kind of all moving like on a string in a sense. So now you can see there's such a big difference between now as opposed to during that losing streak in December where Penny kind of went away from the press.
Now, earlier in the season, Penny was kind of hard on the veterans, in kind of the chemistry. How have you seen them respond in this later part of the season, kind of holding up to the task of kind of leading this team?
I think for the most part, the veterans have all come to play these last couple of games. Landers Nolley had his first 20-point game against Houston all season. DeAndre has been DeAndre. Lester has scored double figures in 5 straight games. The first time he's ever done that in his career, and he's been here 3 seasons. Alex Lomax just came off a historic performance, 9 assists, no turnovers. First time in at least 12 seasons for Memphis. So all of these guys that were receiving the brunt of the criticism have all stepped up in what Lester has called crunch time. So it's as good as Jalen has been playing, as prolific as Josh Minot has been. I think it's really been the veterans that and their steady presence and what they've been contributing that has really kind of helped Memphis take it to another level.
Now, one of the elephants in the room is, you're still without Imani Bates, and losing Imani Bates, not necessarily saying that they're playing better because he's gone, but because he's not on the floor, but they haven't had any type of drop off without Imani Bates. So I don't know if he's expected to come back or so on, but if he is, how do you fit him in to the chemistry that they have currently?
Well, I think for Imani, and I think that narrative is starting to develop kind of nationally that they might be better without Imani. They are 6-1 without him, but I would push back a little bit on that because the first 2 games of this winning streak, Imani was playing. So the run started with him in the lineup as opposed to him out of it. But as for what his role should be when he comes back, and I think this would be a real good thing for Imani because he's used to being the man, used to being the option number 1, 2, and 3 at the other spots he's been at. When he comes in, man, with the way they're rolling, I think Penny has to tell him, hey, we want you to be kind of like that spot-up shooter. We want you to knock down shots. We want you to get your buckets and transition and just play hard on defense. Like I don't think they need to make him a focal point of the offense, if that makes sense, and just kind of let him fit in. Let him fit into that role of not Jaden Hardaway, but obviously he's going to play a lot more minutes. But let him be kind of a catch-and-shoot shooter. Let him kind of attack and transition. But the offense has really been flowing a lot better. There's been a lot more ball movement. You're seeing possessions where multiple guys or 4 or 5 guys touch it on that possession. So I think you just want him to come back, fit into that. And if he can get comfortable over this last stretch, we know how much talent he has. He could kind of be that missing piece, or that final piece, I should say, icing on the – I mean, you know what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But, yeah, basically that final piece that takes Memphis from a very good team to a special team. So I think they can win. I think they can go second weekend without Imani, but Final Four, some of those other things we talked about in the preseason, I think it would be really helpful if you could kind of get Imani comfortable and unlock him during these last as they head into the postseason.
Now, some of Penny Hardaway's X's and O's, some people might have had some opinions on earlier in the season. But how have you think he's done in his coaching job during this winning streak?
I think I've been critical of Penny, and I think people need to kind of match that same energy and give him that same type of credit. I think, like I said, the addition, allowing Coach JJ to play a bigger role in terms of helping the defense. The players have been a little more outspoken on what they've been seeing on offense with Cody Toppert and Larry Brown. So I think he's empowering his assistants a little bit more. I think he's been a lot better with his rotations in terms of he's going to stick with that same in the second half for the most part. If one particular lineup is playing well, he's going to stick with them down the stretch. And he wasn't really doing that in the second half early in the season. We would see, I think it was the Murray State game. Murray State's playing the same 5 guys like the final 7 minutes. Penny is putting guys in, pulling them out, putting guys in, pulling them out. But I think he's become less worried about making sure everybody feels happy about their minutes and more so just about focusing on getting the win. And I think we've also seen the team take strides offensively. Like I said, they finally found who their number 1 and number 2 options are, and everybody else is kind of playing off Jalen and DeAndre. So he's shown a lot of strides, and he deserves a lot of credit for turning this around.
Now, looking at the next game, they lost to SMU earlier this year. Now they're looking for some payback on the road. How do you think they match up in this game against them?
I'm expecting them to go in there and get a win, honestly. With the way they're playing, now they're playing up to their potential. There's not a team in the conference that has the same type of talent of them. Obviously, Kendrick Davis, the SMU guard, is one of the best players in the conference. But overall, when you watched that game last time, I want to be respectful, but I don't think anybody was necessarily blown away with what SMU did. It was just kind of just how bad Memphis looked. So I think if Memphis just plays close to its A game, I think they'll win. SMU's coming off a loss to Temple. They did beat Houston. So SMU is a good team, a good solid team. And I think it's just one of those matchups where they're not going to necessarily beat themselves unless Memphis forces them into mistakes. So if Memphis can press, they can create some turnovers. And if they keep producing the way they've been producing offensively, I think they scored 80 or more in 4 of the last 6 games. I have a hard time seeing SMU slow them down. And they get that win. I think as of now, that's a quad 1 win. That would be huge. And I think that would be the win that would almost take you completely off the bubble and kind of give you like one of those buys going into the NCAA tournament.
And this game has really big regular season conference implications because Memphis is third, 9-4. Mm-hmm. SMU is 9-3. So if they beat Memphis, they'll both be 9-4. And then SMU and Houston still play again before the season is over. And Memphis also plays Houston again. And so Memphis, you know, if everything shakes out, Memphis, there is a route where Memphis could still find themselves at the top of the standings by the time the season is over with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, if Memphis wins on Sunday, they'll move into sole possession to second place. Like you said, they do have Houston again. Houston has SMU. So there's a narrow path. But honestly, I just think at this point, you just want to get to like, as long as you can kind of avoid having to play Houston in the semifinals of the conference tournament, I think that's a win. You know, ideally, Penny would love to have that regular season crown, but as of right now, there's a lot on the line, both with the conference and both with the NCAA tournament. And I just double checked, SMU still top 50 in the net ranking, so this does qualify as a quad 1 win. So there's a lot on the line. Plus, Memphis has done really well in these revenge games. They're 3-0. Beat UCF, beat East Carolina, beat Tulane. This is going to be the toughest one, and they also have to do this one on the road. But with the way the Tigers are playing, it's just kind of hard to bet against them right now.
Yeah, 5 games left in the regular season. I think any coach will tell you they want their team playing their best basketball towards the end of the season, and I think that's what Memphis is doing. So a lot of optimistic views for Memphis basketball right now, which was a little different about a month ago.
Yeah. Let's turn towards football. I know it's been relatively quiet. We're still a couple weeks after signing day and stuff, but it's basically draft season now. What's some of the things you've been hearing about Calvin Austin and some of the other Tigers in the draft?
You know, I talked to his dad when they were doing the Senior Bowl stuff, and you know, he said there were some teams that were a little bit more interested in others and everything. But looking at some of the mock drafts and everything, it looks like both Calvin and Dylan are projected to go in the 3rd round, which I think is pretty good for both of them. The latest projection from NFL.com I saw had Calvin going to the Texans. From what I've heard during the Senior Bowl was that, you know, the Browns were real interested. Antoine Winderlell with the Lions was interested, and the Colts were interested. So it's curious to see where they fall. But I'd be surprised to see Dylan and Calvin still around after the 5th round.
Now, we know Calvin is probably going to test really well in terms of like the 40 and some of these other things as we get close to the combine season. There's obviously going to be questions about his height, but how high do you think he can climb over this next month and a half before we get to the draft?
I think he can still climb high, and the reason why is because Calvin has the surprise factor for a lot of these guys watching him. And, you know, some people that were contacting Ryan Silverfield at the Senior Bowl, you know, kind of alluded to that. You know, Calvin playing at Memphis doesn't necessarily get the national eyeballs if he was a receiver at Alabama or somewhere like that. And so I think people looking at him on paper will expect something from him. And then when you see him on the field, when you see him in the draft combine and all that, he's going to wow you in a way that you didn't expect. And I think that could cause them to pick him over another guy just because you weren't expecting it. And so that surprise factor, I think, could work in Calvin's favor, people kind of doubting his size a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I guess with Dylan, what position are they projecting? He's kind of played some of everything his time with Memphis. What are they kind of projecting him to be when he gets to the league?
Yeah, you know, there's some people still have him at guard, but I see a lot of people wanting him to be at center. Even during the Senior Bowl, some of the national journalists were saying that they liked seeing him have snaps at center. The mock draft at the NFL.com had him being drafted as a center. And so I think if you're Dylan, the thing that works in your favor is the fact that you can play guard, but if you're also being looked at as center, teams may be able to draft you and feel like they can put you in multiple positions, which could make you see the field even quicker. If there's an injury at guard, they can move you over to guard. You know what I mean? So I think him being a versatile offensive lineman in that way could work in his favor early in his career as he's trying to get his footing in the league.
And I guess lastly, if Memphis was to have two guys selected on day 2, which would kind of be round 2, round 3, how big do you think that would be kind of for the program? I think Memphis is slowly starting to develop a reputation among Group of 5 schools of putting players in the league at a consistent rate.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, you look at what their players are doing now in the league. Kenneth Gainwell, Henderson just got him a Super Bowl ring. And if you look and see, 2 more players go higher in the draft, what that tells high school juniors and high school seniors and anybody else looking to be recruited is that you can go to Memphis, compete at a high level, win games, and still make it to the league. And so, the end goal for a lot of players, no matter which school they go to, is they want a chance to make it to the league. And if you look at Memphis's draft history these last, some odd years, they've had a nice history of having at least a few players drafted every year, 1 or 2 players. And so I think if you're a coaching staff, you use that to your advantage. If you come here, there will be a chance for you to make it to the next level. And I think that only helps the program as they try to continue their stock.
All right, well, the Memphis Tigers basketball team looks to kind of win number 7 and get another revenge game under their belt and continue to increase their stock in the NCAA tournament. And it looks like we'll have a couple Tigers drafted when the NFL draft rolls around. So join us next week, and we'll have the latest updates for y'all. Thank y'all so much.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community. The Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.